Heavenly Father, thank you for all the blessings you bestow upon us. Lord, as we enter the last phases of this school year, please be with our students, our teachers, our administrators, and this board as we make crucial decisions to end out the school year. Please guide us in the ways that you want us to go. Please give us the strength and wisdom we need to complete our tasks. And thank you again for all your blessings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes needed to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. At this time, I'll accept the motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to welcome any visitors we may have with us here today. I don't see any new faces out there. Do we have any emails or anything? Okay. We'll move right on into item E, the Jewel litigation presentation. Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So we have on the line Lindsay Lander, who is the board attorney for Gilchrist County. And then we have, I believe, Stephen Mayer, who is a shareholder in the Mayer Law Firm. So, and Jonathan Kiefer, sorry. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lander.
Good morning. I want to make sure this is a different technology. We usually use the Zoom, so just making sure you guys can see me and hear me.
I can hear you.
I'm hearing you.
All right. Well, as Mr. Cowart said, I'm the school board attorney over in Gilchrist County. I met Stephen and John last year, February 2020, at a Florida School Board Attorneys Association meeting I believe it was in Orlando, and they presented to all the attorneys around the state the work that they were doing to bring litigation against the Juul vaping manufacturers all around the country. And they put on a good presentation. And I met with them afterwards, and I stayed in contact with them throughout the year. And they presented to the Gilchrist County School Board just a month or two ago, who decided to retain them to conduct litigation on their behalf against the Juul manufacturers. They've also been in contact with Dixie County, and I believe are presenting to their board on May 11th. And I got in touch with your superintendent and talked with him, and he invited us to come here today to present what they have and what they can offer. As Mr. Delaney and I, we're school board attorneys. We're not mass court litigators, and so these guys, this is what they do, and I've been impressed with their attention to especially small districts. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to them and let them tell you what they do and what they might could do for Levy County.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Steve Mayer. I'm a lawyer in Winter Park, Florida, just a little bit south of you all. I have with me John Kiefer, who is an attorney with the law firm of Wagstaff and Cartmel in Kansas City, Missouri. And John's firm and my firm, as well as a number of other firms, have been litigating this Juul problem throughout the nation over the past 2 years, actually a little over a year and a half ago. I want to just kind of tell you a couple of things. First of all, I've been practicing in the state of Florida for, 30-something years. I'm a board certified civil trial lawyer. Our firm's been around Central Florida over 50 years. We represented in the 1990s the state of Florida. Some of you may remember the case against the tobacco manufacturers. We represented the state of Florida to get back some of the Medicaid money that the state had paid on behalf of Medicaid recipients for smoking-related illnesses. we were able to recover a multi-billion-dollar amount for the state of Florida, which was used in part to educate kids and have a campaign against teen smoking. And that program was very, very successful. You may remember that certainly when I was in high school, when we had smoking sections at our public high school, everybody smoked. Now, very few people smoke actual combustible cigarettes, but they've all changed to the Juuls. And the Juuls are the vaping products. And the schools have been having a difficult time with that, not only from a disciplinary point of view, but also an administrative point of view. We are representing in the state of Florida, Palm Beach County, Orange County School Board, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Seminole, Brevard, Lee, as well as Gilchrist County. And nationally, we represent, our group represents in the hundreds of school districts. And I'm going to let John Kiefer tell you about that in a moment. But what has happened is that all of these cases that have been filed on behalf of school districts around the country have been consolidated in a court in San Francisco, California. It's a federal district court for the Northern District of California. There is a judge there that is handling all of these cases. Every case that we have filed on behalf of our Florida school districts has been transferred to San Francisco. Every case filed in New York, anywhere else in the country, all goes to San Francisco. And that judge handles that case up until the time of trial. And at the end of the discovery period, which is where we take depositions, do investigation, etc., the judge will send back all the cases back to their home districts. For instance, this would be the Northern District of Florida, United States District Court for the Northern District of Florida. But while the case is progressing in San Francisco, the judge has set for trial 6 school districts to be what's called the first wave bellwether trials. And they're called bellwether trials because we look at them as bellwethers of what a jury is likely to do with the rest of the cases. So what we have now is we have our first set of trials that are happening next year. And one of the cases, or one of the school districts that is part of that bellwether group is Palm Beach County, Florida. And that is the largest bellwether district that we have. And we're in the process right now, John Kiefer and my firm are in the process of working that case up and preparing it for trial. John's firm represents the other 5 bellwether districts for trial as well in this litigation. I'm going to turn it over at this point to John Kiefer, and he's going to tell you a little bit about what's going on. But I want you to understand that John's firm is in the leadership of the multi-district litigation in San Francisco, which is extremely important for this, for representing your school district if you choose to do it, or any other school districts. John?
Thanks, Steve. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, Steve's comments, I think, were pretty comprehensive. I'll try to keep my brief. I suspect the board has a pretty good idea of the nature of the electronic cigarette, what we call kind of vaping problem, or you wouldn't have made time on your agenda for us today to briefly touch on one item that Steve mentioned. When I was a high school student in the 1980s, the national rates of smoking of traditional cigarettes, depending on the area of the country you were in, were somewhere between 1/3 and 1/4 of high school students. Over the 30 plus years since then, rates of what we call combustible cigarette smoking among high school students have plummeted. The national data from the CDC and the Surgeon General tells us that as of 2015 or 2016, something less than about 6% of high school students nationwide smoke cigarettes. That honestly is one of the biggest public health victories of my generation. Unfortunately, in the roughly 4 to 5 year span of time between 2015 and 2020, a lot of that good work was completely undone. And as of 2020, again, depending on the part of the country you are in, it is reported that anywhere from 25% to almost 40% of high school students regularly use an electronic cigarette or a vaping device. In fact, the Surgeon General reported that in the 1 year span of time from 2017 to 2018, use of e-cigarettes by high school students almost doubled in 1 year, went up 78%. And perhaps even more troubling, use of these products by middle school students increased by almost 50% in that same 1 year period of time. So the bottom line of that is what it took almost 40 years to accomplish in terms of driving down teenage rates of cigarette smoking has been largely undone in the span of about 4 to 5 years, largely as a result of the marketing efforts of one company, this company by the name of Juul, Juul. And I won't spend a bunch of time talking about that company this morning, but they have acquired a pretty high profile, most of it negative, in the national media. They burst on the scene in 2015 with kind of a revolutionary e-cigarette device. It's been referred to as the iPhone of vaping devices. They launched their product with a marketing campaign that was clearly geared toward children and youth. And I have about a 10-minute video. I'm not going to take the time to show it to you this morning, but I can provide a link to the board after this presentation. You can view it if you like. But it gives an overview of Juul, the company, the way it targeted teenagers, its phenomenal growth, and unfortunately the havoc that's wreaked within the public schools. I would tell you that Juul as a company between 2017 and 2018 saw its revenues increase from about $200 million to over $1 billion. And at the same time, Juul was identified as the most popular e-cigarette device among teenagers. You all probably know better than I, because your feet are on the ground in the school district every day, the problems this has wrought. We represent, as Steve mentioned, my firm filed the first lawsuits against Juul on behalf of school districts in the United States. We did that in September and October of 2019. Today, we represent the vast majority of the school districts that are pursuing legal claims against Juul. We represent literally districts that are huge: Palm Beach County, Florida, Orange County, Florida. We represent tiny districts in my home state of Kansas, urban, suburban, rural, large, small, north, south, east, west, and everything in between. And I can tell you the stories that I have heard from superintendents and principals and board members are shockingly similar, regardless of the part of the country you are in. They are seeing, discipline rates and suspension rates that have increased 100, 200, 300% year over year. They're seeing kids that are vaping in class. Sometimes the teachers can catch them, sometimes they can't. A lot of these kids, unfortunately, are nicotine addicted because the Juul device delivers whopping amounts of nicotine. And this epidemic has proved to be a profound distraction on the fundamental mission of public schools, which is to deliver a good education to the next generation in hopefully what is a safe and reasonably healthy environment. So the lawsuits that we have filed against Juul seek compensation for the schools. So, for example, money to develop anti-vaping curricula and programming, technology resources. So, for example, vape sensors and vape detectors that can be installed throughout the school building, certain types of video technology, surveillance technology to go along with that, cessation programs, in some instances, treatment services. And those are just kind of the highlights. As Steve mentioned, this litigation is proceeding at a rapid clip. My law firm is on what's called the Plaintiffs Steering Committee, or PSC. That means that we are one of the law firms that is guiding the litigation. So, for example, we're taking the depositions of Juul executives. We're reviewing the documents. We're hiring the expert witnesses. And as Steve also mentioned, my law firm represents the 4 bellwether school district cases that the judge has selected for early trials. So that is Palm Beach County, Florida, the largest of the bellwethers, San Francisco Unified, Tucson Unified, and a district in Wichita, Kansas. But we represent a number throughout the state of Florida and elsewhere. We believe in this litigation. Obviously, the past year has been unusual with COVID. Different districts have, some have continued in-person classes, some have been remote, some have been in a hybrid mode. But all of the clients that we have spoken with have told us, the problem hasn't gone away in the past year. If kids are not in school, obviously, the districts may not have seen the firsthand problems from vaping for a period of time while the kids were learning at home. But what we're hearing, including from Palm Beach County, is that when kids have returned to campus, the problem has returned with them because, unfortunately, a lot of these kids are nicotine addicted. It's a significant problem. It needs to be addressed. All of the data indicates that kids who vape and consume nicotine are at much higher risk of starting to smoke traditional cigarettes. They're also at much higher risk of taking up use of other illicit substances, whether that is marijuana, THC, pills, or other things. So we believe in this case. We've got a lot of lawyers invested in it. We think the school cases are particularly compelling because all schools are trying to do is take care of kids and deliver a first-class education. And this has really been a tsunami that's been unleashed on them. I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about the financial side of things unless folks have questions, but we do all of this work on what's called a contingent fee basis. So we advance all the expenses. There's no obligation on the part of the school district to pay back any portion of our expenses or an attorney's fee unless there is a net positive recovery for the school district. And so what I mean by that is if your district were to decide to join this litigation, there is no scenario under which you would end up in the red, for lack of a better term, over this litigation. If the litigation turns out to fizzle, and we don't think it will, this is what we do. We've done this sort of work for the better part of 20 years, and we think, we know a meritorious case when we see one, and one that is likely to lead to a positive financial recovery. We think this is one. But if the litigation were to fizzle, then all that risk is on us. If the litigation results in a significant settlement, then any of our attorney's fees or expenses would get paid back out of that. But again, as I mentioned, your district would end up with a net positive financial recovery. So I always tell folks there'd never be a situation where we would come to you and say, congratulations, there's been a settlement. Your share of that is $250,000. That's the good news. The bad news is you owe us $1 million. You would not end up upside down economically in this litigation. It's our belief that it is likely that it will produce a net positive financial result at the end of the day, and that money can be used by districts to fund things like prevention programs, related technology, related staff increases if necessary. The final thing I'll say, and then I'll take questions, is there are some attorneys general in different states around the country that have filed litigation against Juul. That's fine. We support that. We welcome them to this fight. But the cases we are filing are on behalf of the school districts individually. So this is not an attorney general action. This is not a class action. So we are filing each case on behalf of each school district individually. The advantage to that is twofold. Number one, you call the shots. If there's a settlement offer down the line, your board gets to decide whether to accept that or reject that. Nobody else gets to make that decision for you. So you are the masters of your own destiny as it relates to that. The second issue is, assuming there is a settlement and a net positive financial recovery, those funds belong to your school district and you can use them as you see fit. Sometimes when states and their attorneys general bring actions, and I'm not criticizing, but if monies are recovered, then the powers that be at the state level get to decide how to use those funds. And they may put them into prevention programming for kids, or they may decide to go fix potholes in roads and bridges with the money. In the case of the suits we're filing, if we file on behalf of your school district and there is a financial recovery, then those funds are yours to decide how to allocate within your district to address this problem. I think those are all the general comments I have, unless Steve has any follow-up remarks on topics that I failed to address. I'd be happy to take any questions anybody has.
Mr. Keith, do you currently know how many others have filed lawsuits against Juul besides your law firm?
Did you say with my law firm?
Besides your law firm, do you know other companies that have already filed suit or states?
I can tell you the numbers change almost weekly, but there are two large pieces of litigation against Juul that are ongoing right now. The first is this federal multi-district litigation, or MDL, that Steve mentioned. That's pending in San Francisco, California. That is the one that my firm is the most active in. There are a little over 100 cases that have been filed in that litigation. My firm has filed about 70 of them. So we represent the substantial majority. I can tell you, of the ones we have not, of the ones in the federal MDL that we have not filed, there might be a half a dozen at most that have been filed by other firms that are part of the plaintiff's leadership team that we are on. There is, I want to say, maybe about 20 cases filed by one California firm in the MDL. They are not part of the plaintiff's leadership team. It's certainly fine that they filed the cases. We, again, welcome them to the litigation, but they are sort of, for lack of a better word, they're sort of relegated to the sidelines throughout the case because they're not a part of the team that is litigating it, as mine and several others are. There's another large piece of litigation that is going forward in California State Court in Los Angeles. It's kind of like a California state equivalent of an MDL. And there, at last count, I think there were about 50 school districts that had filed in that litigation. One of them being Los Angeles Unified, the second largest in the country. Almost all of those school districts are California school districts. We are working in partnership with the lawyers in that California state litigation jointly to prosecute the school district cases. So, for example, my firm is one of three that is hiring and working with the approximately 20 or 25 expert witnesses that we have in this case. We're sharing our expert witnesses with the lawyers in the California state court case. So even though we don't directly represent those 50 or so California school districts, we're working in close partnership with the lawyers who are, to try to steer this case to a positive result on behalf of the common group of school districts that we represent. So I would say collectively, but my firm represents the vast majority of the school districts in the federal case, and we're working quite closely with the firms that represent virtually all of the currently filed cases in the California state court litigation. So in total, I want to say it's about 150 school districts that are currently pursuing claims against Jewel and the other defendants.
Thank
Yep.
Mr. Kiefer, I just want to be sure I understand what you say. We would have no upfront costs, only if we recover any money. If we win this thing, y'all will essentially take a percentage of that, I'm assuming, and we get to use any proceeds that we are rewarded at our discretion, correct?
That is correct.
I will tell you this, as far as I go, I hate vaping, I hate Juul, I hate cigarettes, I hate it all. And if Levy County joining in with you bankrupts them, I am for it. You could have jumped right to that little blurb right there, and we didn't need to listen to all this from me. But the others have questions, but if that's the way it works, I have no problem with this. Anyone else?
What's the estimated time frame for this? I know you said next year it's going to court, trials, the first trials, but what do you realistically think the time frame is?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll answer it as best I can. But the most honest, direct answer is I don't know with any degree of certainty. Here's what I can tell you. This case, and I don't know if you all are at all familiar, even in passing, with the national opioid litigation that is ongoing, but the Juul litigation is somewhat similar in the way that it is being managed. What I can tell you is that we have an excellent, excellent judge in this case. He has been emphatic since day one that he thinks vaping is a public health crisis and that he is particularly disturbed at the impact on youth. He has made it clear since day one that he intends to move this case forward at warp speed, and he has done that. The case really got going sort of officially in about December of 2019. So we're not quite 18 months. We're more like about 15 months into the case. And it is a massive case. I mean, I think Juul's produced over 5 million documents. We're on path to take probably 75 depositions at least. Judge Orrick has moved this case about as fast as anything I've ever seen move, and he's done it in the middle of a pandemic. We've been able to do everything, including depositions and court hearings, remotely and by Zoom. We won't try cases by Zoom, I'm sure, but we have really lost no ground to the pandemic. He has scheduled 5 trials for next year. The first starting in February, and he's staggered them about 6 weeks apart through August of next year. And I will tell you, nothing creates momentum for a settlement more than a looming trial date. And he understands that. And so, could we reach a settlement before the first trial date in February of next year? We certainly could. Will we? I don't know the answer to that. But I would, if I were a betting man, which is, it's dangerous, but I would say the most likely kind of window for a settlement would be sometime in that kind of February to August of 2022 timeframe, when these cases are either about to be tried or some of the trials are actually happening. And, the parties, the plaintiffs, the defendants, and the court are getting an idea of sort of what a jury will do when presented with this set of facts. So I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that sometimes these cases go on for years. Some litigations move slow. But our judge has got this on a path to have the first trial within about 24 months of when the case got going, which in a massive case of this size is a blistering pace. But that's something that we ask for. That's something we're all in favor of. So we would sure hope within about the next year to 18 months, but understand all the caveats I made along with that. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Kiefer, if I could ask you to send that video to Ms. Hogan so we could distribute it to the board members, I'd appreciate that. And my plan was to bring this to you as on next agenda as an action item if you pursue.
Yes, sir.
I have questions if that's all right with the board.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Kiefer, this is David Delaney, I'm the board attorney, and I appreciate you taking the time to explain the litigation. I've got a couple just follow-ups so the board would have an understanding. Is there any non-monetary relief being sought in this litigation?
Well,
Sorry, did you hear that all right?
yeah, you asked, is there any non-monetary relief? I mean, I can.
Any injunctive relief or anything like that being sought against the company?
Yeah, there. Short answer is on behalf of some clients. It is complicated. We are on the whole, we are not seeking injunctive relief, but we've done it selectively where it's important to a client. I'm not trying to dodge your question. The answer gets real complicated real fast. Certain aspects of Juul's business are now subject to the regulatory framework of the Federal Food and Drug Administration. That was not the case when Juul initially launched its product. And so it's a fairly complicated, thorny legal question as to how much authority this federal court has to dictate the specifics, for example, of an injunction against this company relative to how much legal authority the Food and Drug Administration has, if that makes sense to you. So, for example, where we are still seeking injunctive relief, we are seeking it fairly narrowly. For example, seeking a decree from the court that Juul not be permitted to engage in advertising and marketing that is patently youth and kid oriented. Now, in point of fact, there's a body of federal law and FDA regulations that already prohibits that. So I'm sorry that wasn't the most direct answer, but we get that question from certain school districts. What we tell them is, on the whole, we're not sure exactly how strong those injunctive relief claims will prove to be at the end of the day, and they can kind of complicate the litigation. So if you leave it up to us, we may not bring them now, but if it is important to you, because it is important to some schools sometimes to send a message symbolically, we're happy to bring them.
My next question would be, do you have a percentage of the overall recovery that is anticipated for the class participants? Do you have a range or an estimate or anything along those lines?
I don't, and I get that question a lot, and candidly, it would honestly be pure speculation. The one thing I will say is, you use the word class. It's true, the school district cases are a discrete group of cases within this federal multi-district litigation. For example, there are several thousand cases that have been brought, for example, by teenagers. Some are catastrophically injured with lung and respiratory problems. A majority of them may not have current physical injuries, but they are seeking relief for their addiction. That's one group of cases. The school district cases are a separate group. We are not in the process yet of any settlement negotiations. It is likely when we eventually get there, we will at least begin, I would think, by trying to negotiate as a group. But as I mentioned, each school district's case is a separate legal case. So you're not necessarily wed to, for example, if Palm Beach County, Florida were to settle its case, you wouldn't be required to do that. By the same token, if a Palm Beach County, Florida said, we don't like the amount of money that's being offered to us, we want to take our case to trial, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that either. None of what I just said gives you a direct answer to your question. What I can tell you is the damages claims we will be making on behalf of the schools will be very large. I'm working with the expert witnesses who are evaluating those issues. This is a massive problem. It's going to take a lot of resources, and it's going to take a massive solution to address it. So the one thing I can tell you is, at the end of the day, this company will have to face very, very large claims from school districts. To the extent that factors into the settlement calculations of the defendants and their lawyers, and usually, eventually, in cases like this, it does. We certainly hope that'll be a factor motivating a settlement, but I'm just not able to give you a monetary range today.
Sure. Okay. Do you have an estimate of what is Jewel worth? If the litigation is successful, you bring the company to its knees, you put it out of business, what's available to recover?
Yeah, great question. And people ask that a lot. Here's what I can tell you. Jewel, as a result of litigation and bad press, has downgraded the company worth a bit in the last year or two. It's a bit difficult to tell how much of that is legitimate and how much of it is sort of public relations. But perhaps the most relevant numbers I can give you are this. In late 2018, a company by the name of Altria, which is the parent company of Philip Morris Tobacco, paid $12.5 billion for a 35% stake in Jewel, the company. That was the single largest infusion of private equity capital in Silicon Valley history. Shortly thereafter, executives of Philip Morris took over the management of Jewel. Jewel's current chief executive officer literally ran the Marlboro cigarette brand for 20 years for Philip Morris. We have been successful so far in this litigation. We've sued Altria. Altria is a defendant, as are multiple members of the board of directors, several of whom are billionaires. Altria's sales are in the tens of billions of dollars every year. They are a defendant in this case. They have filed multiple motions to dismiss, and we have kept them in the case. And we believe they will remain in the case unless and until a jury comes back with a verdict. So they are not going anywhere. They are a wealthy company that, as I say, has sales every year in the tens of billions of dollars and a net worth in the tens of billions of dollars. So we feel pretty good about the fact that if for whatever reason Jewel were to file for bankruptcy, there are other extremely well-heeled defendants, not the least of which is Altria, that will be around to be able to pay a judgment. And Jewel, by all accounts, is still very profitable. They have an application pending right now with the Food and Drug Administration to be allowed to remain on the market, ostensibly as an alternative device to combustible cigarettes, and supposedly as a safer device than combustible cigarettes. It remains to be seen whether the FDA will allow Jewel to remain on the market. But if it does, I think, right or wrong, Jewel's financial fortunes will be pretty healthy for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Would recovery be apportioned based amongst your school district clients based on the number of students enrolled in any particular district, or do you have another method for apportioning a potential recovery?
Well, that's an excellent question, too. The short answer is we do not have a methodology that has sort of been finalized and reduced to writing, but you are on the right track. I think a settlement could take a couple of forms, as follows. If the defendants wanted to engage in settlement discussions about an individual case or cases, we would do that. So what sometimes happens is a bellwether case gets set for trial. Let's just use Palm Beach as an example. And let's say we're days away from a trial. Sometimes the defendants don't want to walk into a courtroom against a bellwether plaintiff. They might attempt to negotiate a settlement of that individual case. And so that's one possibility, down the line, that cases could be kind of individually negotiated. The other option is what we sometimes call a global settlement, that, for whatever group of school districts are in the litigation, we arrive at sort of a tentative global amount of money. That is something that your district would be able to give the thumbs up or the thumbs down to. As I said before, you would ultimately have the right to approve of or veto any settlement that you would be a part of. But if there were what we call kind of a global settlement, I think there would have to be a reasonable apportionment methodology. I think that methodology would undoubtedly take into account size. Size would not be measured exclusively, I don't think, in terms of number of students. I think it would also probably take into account the number of buildings, high school buildings, middle school buildings, because that relates in part to our damages claim and the resources we believe are going to be necessary to fight this problem. I think a settlement apportionment methodology would probably also have to take into account the magnitude of the problem in a particular school district. For example, if one district has 20% of high school kids that are vaping and another has 40%, the problem is arguably a bit worse in the latter example than in the former. But to try to answer your question directly, although we haven't yet arrived at sort of a methodology, I think it's likely we will. I mean, and I'll leave it at that. And I think there would definitely be sort of a size and sort of demographic component that would probably feature in that in a fairly significant way.
Just a few more follow-ups. We're making progress here. Thank you for the indulgence, board members. I thought I heard you say that there would be no financial risks to the district for participating in this litigation. Do you have a contract that guarantees that?
Yeah, we have a fee agreement that we're happy to share with you and any other attorneys or board members that want to vet it, look at the particulars of that, come back to us with any questions. We're more than happy to address the details of that. Normally, it ends up being with the attorneys, yourself, for example, on behalf of the school district. But if folks have questions at the board level, once they've seen that, we're more than happy to address that.
Okay. And would class participants be, or I keep saying class participants, but would your clients, the school districts, need to participate in discovery or be available to produce records, give depositions, things like that?
That's an excellent question, and I get that a lot because folks always want to know what sort of resource commitment is there. The answer is, for a district like yours, the answer is a qualified yes. And here's what I mean by that. If a school district is not a bellwether case, and yours presumably would not be because the court has already selected those. For example, Palm Beach County is the one in Florida right now. For non-bellwether cases, your only obligation for the foreseeable future is to complete what is called a plaintiff fact sheet, or we call it a PFS. And for the lawyers on this call, a plaintiff fact sheet in litigation like this substitutes for more traditional discovery like interrogatories and document requests. I have a copy of the plaintiff fact sheet. I'm familiar with it because I helped to draft it. I helped to negotiate it with the court. It has about 40 questions or 45, about, in my view, 25 to 30 of which are not very burdensome at all. There's a lot of just basic information. How many students in your district? How many high school buildings? How many middle school buildings? What's the name of the superintendent for the last 10 years? Stuff that's really quite easy. There are a handful of questions that ask for any sort of pre-existing off-the-shelf summary reports. So for example, if your school district has reports that summarize increases in student discipline or suspensions as a result of vaping, you would need to produce those. But if you don't have those sort of reports already pre-existing, you don't have to go search your files and your databases to create them. I will tell you, this plaintiff fact sheet is a pretty minimal burden. Most of my clients have been able to complete it, depending on the size of the district, in anywhere from a couple of hours to maybe a day's worth of work. There is not currently any other obligation for non-bellwether school districts other than that. So there's not an obligation to produce other documents, to produce witnesses for depositions. That's very different than the bellwether districts. The Palm Beach counties of the world are having to produce a lot of documents, a lot of witnesses for depositions, things like that. Is it conceivable that if your case were ultimately remanded back out of the MDL and to the local federal court there in Florida, is it conceivable there might be other discovery requirements, like a small number of depositions? It's conceivable. I don't think it's terribly likely. And I would tell you, on the current schedule we are on, I don't think that would happen before mid to late 2022, if it happened at all. So the plaintiff fact sheet is the only current discovery obligation you would have. And I'm happy to provide a copy of that to you after this call if you want to take a look, so that you can kind of get a sense of the information that's asked for there.
Mr. Kiefer, if you'll add that with the agreement, so for us to take a look at along with the video, we would appreciate that.
Certainly will.
And just last question, for the bellwether districts, have student records or FERPA protected documents been requested?
Another great question. The answer is yes and no. Information that contains student identifying information, so disciplinary records, has been requested, will need to be produced, but we are redacting any student identifying information. And that is not a subject of dispute, at least not at this point. The defendants have not said we want student identifying information, and the court has given no indication that it would require any student identifying information. So if, for example, suspensions in the district have gone up year over year, we have to produce that. If there are individual records, for example, that might identify the type of vaping device, we have to produce that. But we are redacting names, social security numbers, physical descriptions, anything that would identify the students.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Thank you, board.
Any other questions?
I just have one more, please, Mr. Kiefer. I know when you initially were talking about 8 local school districts, and of course, nationally, there's hundreds of them. But is your company, do you have a cutoff as to how many school districts that you're going to be presenting and asking if they'd like to join this suit? Or do you just continue on continuously presenting to other school districts?
Yeah, great question. The answer is really more the latter than the former of what you said. We don't have a cutoff. We are happy to represent really any school district that wants to be a part of this litigation, regardless of size or geographic location. What I've told, because I've presented to an awful lot of school districts since the fall of 2019 and today, and what I tell folks is, you all are the best judges of whether or not you have a problem with this that you believe you need to take some action on. And if you think vaping is a real problem in your school district, then we're happy to represent you if you are interested in being a part of this. I've had a very small number of districts tell me in the last year and a half they don't think they have a problem. I kind of scratch my head because I've, as I say, literally urban, suburban, rural, regardless of the part of the country, our clients span the gamut, and they all have a pretty significant problem with this. But I have certainly told some school districts who have said, you know, we've talked to people, we've looked at our records, we don't think we have a problem. I've told them, if you don't think you have a problem, then I don't know why I would want to initiate litigation on your behalf. But the opposite is also true. If this is a legitimate problem in your school district, we're happy to represent you. We don't have some absolute number or cutoff date, you know, on any of that, at least as things stand today.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? All right, well, we appreciate it, gentlemen. We will review everything and make a decision next meeting or so. Thank you.
We'll get that information. Thank you all for the time to speak with you this morning.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess. I call the meeting. Cedar Key School. Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, as you can see here, so we started a new program, with hospitality, and 2 years ago, we started aquaculture in Cedar Key. And on the line, we have Nicole Gill from Cedar Key, who has started as the teacher for the hospitality program. So, and I believe we've got a video that's queued up here, and we've got some students in class. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Gill.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the Cedar Key Hospitality and Tourism Program and the Cedar Key Aquaculture Program today. Our students are here. They'll be available for a Q&A after we share with you our two presentations. Let me just say that when I first became principal at Cedar Key School, the first meeting I had was with the community members who said our two main industries in town are aquaculture and hospitality and tourism. Can the school do anything to train our next leaders in these two industries? So working with Carol Jones, we did start the aquaculture program 3 years ago, and this year we started our hospitality and tourism program. So the students want to share what they learn and what they do. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Give me a moment while I set everything up. Good morning. This is our Career and Technical Education in Cedar Key presentation. We are doing our best to make a difference one student at a time to prepare students to be career and college ready during an expanding global market.
Hi there. Thank you so much for allowing Cedar Key School to share with you today something about our hospitality and tourism program, our aquaculture program, and the future of CTE at Cedar Key School. CTE programs are so critical to our students' success. They're teaching our students foundational skills so that they can make a contribution in the community in which they live in the future. We're giving our kids an opportunity to fulfill their hopes and dreams, and we want to share with you what our newest CTE programs look like. So thank you for the opportunity to have CTE programs in our school, and let's listen to our students. Thank you.
Hospitality and tourism is the second leading employment industry in the United States with an anticipated growth rate of 10% for the next decade.
I chose to be in the hospitality program because after graduation, I want to be in the food industry. I chose to be in the hospitality program because my parents are in the industry and I wanted to learn more about it. My mom has been in the hospitality industry all my life, and I wanted to see and learn about what she does. I joined hospitality because I'd like to own a restaurant one day, and I work in one, and I like it.
I chose this class to learn more about the hospitality businesses in Cedar Key, so when I graduate, I can open up my own business. I joined the hospitality and tourism class to add to my resume and expand my career field options after and in college.
With the rich and expanding tourism industry in Cedar Key, developing the next generation of entrepreneurs and managers for businesses that focus on accommodations, food and beverage, transportation, and attractions will allow the Cedar Key community the ability to adapt to meet the needs of the citizens and consumers.
And hospitality and tourism for Cedar Key is its future, because if we want to keep our environmental identity the way it is, we have to develop a good, strong tourism base. And the best way to do that with hospitality is to teach our visitors how to respect and take care of our environment. And our hospitality people need to be well versed and understand so they can translate this to the tourists as they come. They're the most key component because they are the connection between the tourists and us. And they are very important. And we really need to develop their skills.
Hospitality and Tourism Management has a 5-year potential program. Year 1 is what we've just completed with Introduction to Hospitality and Tourism, and next year we will expand to Technology for Hospitality and Tourism. During Introduction to Hospitality and Tourism, students learn more about the 4 industry sectors: accommodations, food and beverage, transportation, and attractions. Even though students were not able to observe these businesses in action, the class completed all 16 chapters of the textbook, watched customer service TED Talks, and discussed how businesses had to adapt to stay open during the pandemic. Currently, we're learning about food safety preparations in order to take our ServSafe industry certification. Students navigated event management earlier this school year by learning how to build a sponsorship packet, prepare a menu, and design shirts for our first ever event. Through community partnership with local businesses and the SALT program, we were able to raise funds for our program, along with providing funding to other programs at Cedar Key School. Our very first field trip allowed students to experience how the #1 tourist destination was able to overcome the global pandemic to reopen and provide customers a safe experience. Each student had their temperature checked at the entrance, wore a mask all day, and participated in social distancing while on property. Students also observed how the parks added the reservation system so travelers would be guaranteed park availability and to limit crowding. As Disney uses multiple ways of transporting guests, students were also able to observe multiple facets of the hospitality and tourism industry in one action-packed day. Customer service is key for Disney cast members. Our first interaction came from a food and beverage operator that played rock, paper, scissors with each one of us. While all of us were apprehensive at the beginning, we were all having a blast throughout the process. Ultimately, everyone from Cedar Key won except me. As we walked away, students thought that the interaction had been planned. However, they had just experienced Disney magic and were excited to see what would happen next. Our other magical moment was when a photographer wanted to have our student with a mobility device do tricks on her scooter. She playfully interacted, and as we were leaving the park a few hours later, he again asked her to do tricks. He intentionally reached out to her and made magic, even though he was with other guests. It was fabulous. Currently, we are working towards learning more for our ServSafe industry certification, preparing for hospitality and tourism technology next year, and identifying businesses that we can partner with for upcoming volunteering and experience opportunities.
We're also going to be asking community members to come speak to the class about customer service, technology within the industry, and the evolving global market, as these industries have had to change significantly over the past year. As we explore the goals of tomorrow, we are preparing our students to be career and college ready.
So thank you all for listening to our hospitality presentation. If anybody has any questions on hospitality, we can answer those now, or we can go directly into our SALT presentation.
Any questions? No? Thank you, Ms. Gill. So we'll go on right in on to the SALT. So great job.
Thank you so much. I'll go back into presenter mode.
Do I just go ahead and talk? All right, I'm Rachel Weatherington. I'm the teacher of ag and aquaculture and all that stuff here at Cedar Key. This is our third year in the program. So we have two different pathways for aquaculture. They can do the true and traditional pathway where they take it as the ag class, which will count as CTE credit, count for college, and all that good stuff with foundations, Aqua 2 and Aqua 3. We did have 2 students this year take the class as Research 1 because they decided right before their senior year that they wanted to take the class and it would be beneficial for them. So we did make sure that that could happen. We've got a couple videos from the seniors.
I'm Ty Winfield. I'm a senior, and I think students should take aquaculture classes because they will learn about how aquatic life works and grows. I've been working in aquaculture for 4 years and was able to learn about other aspects of the aquaculture industry.
Hello, I'm Jaden. I'm a senior. This is my second year taking aquaculture class. Students should do aquaculture because it provides a high quality and healthy food and also produces fish and shellfish. So now I know all the skills to produce and harvest fish and plants. So if I decide to go into animal science, I will be more aware and prepared for my future. It also just helps me become a better citizen in Cedar Key by teaching me about water quality in my community.
My name is John Pelham. I joined my school's aquaculture program not only because it provides plenty of career opportunities, but aquaculture plays a large role in my community. I'd eventually like to be a part of that. I'm Ty Winfield.
Hello, I'm Jaden.
My name is John Pelham.
Sorry about that. So we've got a couple different projects going on besides the textbook learning, and each of the kids are going to tell you about these projects. So the first one is recirculating aquaculture.
Hello, I'm Jaden Beckham, and today I'll be talking about RAS. RAS stands for Recirculating Aquaculture System. RAS is a closed system that allows us to monitor and track water quality. Last year, Mr. Reggie came and helped us set up an RAS for our tilapia, but during the freeze, all our tilapia died that were outside. We had 4 breeders in the classroom, luckily, thanks to me and Lexi. That is now producing offspring. RAS is a good system, and most fish farms use them today.
The second major project we have going on is the clam lease.
Hey, I'm Ty Winfield. First, we want to thank all our sponsors that are listed on the screen. The good of having a clam lease is to grow and harvest clams for a living. Here's where we're planting belts. The belts will stay in the water for over a year or until the clams are to the size of your harvestable market. That's us counting out seed, seeing how many to a liter, which lets us know how many we need to put per bag. That's us building belts.
My name is Kyle Stewart, and I'll be talking about the waterway cleanup. The reason we do the waterway cleanup is so that we can go out and try to get as much trash and stuff out of the water as we can. Right there is us getting the kayaks ready to go.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
We collected quite a bit of debris throughout the year. I'd have to go look at my records, but I want to say we were close to 300 pounds of trash. Hello, I'm Cadence Girdler, and today I'm going to be talking about the storm drain project. Our job with the storm drain project is to collect trash, to sweep them clean, and to keep the surrounding areas clean. We have also been cataloging the data based upon the trash we've picked up, and the biggest item of trash we've come across is cigarette butts. This is us cleaning it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna Lavoie Ingham, and I'm in the 11th grade in the aquaculture class. We've had the opportunity to volunteer with the coastal cleanup and with UF and IFA, and we've done about 3 seagrass plantings with UF to help restore our local shorelines and prevent erosion.
All right, we offer a lot of certifications through the aquaculture program. This was really pushed by community members wanting people, even if they're not going to enter the clam industry, but being hireable and desirable employees. This year we've offered OSHA 10, forklift, CPR, first aid, and boater safety. We also had some of our second year or seniors complete the Florida Aquaculture Association certification. And we're hoping next year to offer Safe Serve. And we've been talking with Carol Jones about potentially offering CDL for any 18 plus students. That's what we got.
Still the speaker? I have a quick question.
That was Miss Weatherington.
Ms. Weatherington?
Yep.
So the students have their own clam lease. What happens with the clams? Do you sell them to local restaurants or?
What we would do, so this was the first year we've had the clam lease, and we haven't harvested any yet because we take a minimum of 12 months for that. But we already have a wholesale buyer that will be purchasing them from us for a guaranteed income.
Oh, that's awesome.
How often do they have to go out and check on them, Miss Rachel?
Only about 3 times a school year. Clams are pretty self-sufficient compared to cows and pigs and things. So once they're in the ground, you only have to pull them to transfer from nursery to grow out, and then to check after the big storms and any tidal differences.
Okay, cool.
How many beds do they have out there? The beds that they said they made?
We've got 3 belts, sorry. We've got 3 belts of grow out, and we've got 1 belt of nursery, and we're actually going out tomorrow to transfer our nursery to grow out. So that'll be the 4th.
That's great. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherington.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
You guys are so welcome. Cedar Key is going to go ahead and check out if there are no additional questions.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. We appreciate you.
Guys, thank you so much for having us.
I'll leave it with you, Mr. Superintendent, to take us into the next.
All right, we'll move on to the Yankeetown School presentation, which is a video. And it's of their school story time. So Paul Bunyan, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Bennett.
I am John Ainslinger, and I play in South Infinity again. You total up to numbers strongly have two different life, figure, and exercise before they are living. This is basically the really cool. What is blue? What is blue? What is the blue? What is blue? His legs was so like tree trunk that the regular lumberjacks become confused and go after him like there's all around. This is Yanko's Cream Puff Patty. I'm Cream Puff Patty. Golden Flapjacks are specialty. She flips flapjacks so light and delicious. The hungry lumberjacks have to kneel down next breakfast to fork on the day before. Have you ever seen a stack of celery flapjacks eating a little butter and bitters and maple syrup? My name is Jason. This man was favoring the time card for all 700 foodmen and belongings down. Or 700 lumberjacks in the bottom. And each one with their split arrows exactly to the minute. I don't miss Brian Meyer lost their teeth. What do you mean? Dot the eyes, the curls of the teeth. Huh? Did you just say something? No, I must be there because I must be there. I said I got the eye and crossed the teeth. If you want for me, you could roll this cigarette. I told you to talk to me. I never heard of such a thing in all my days. You are so ungrateful. You are never comfortable. That's mine. I can't spoil me. This street has fucking zero earrings. This is the most unheard of thing I ever heard of. Johnny Ainslinger, Branch Street, the boy Cornet. He told him about the Johnny. Johnny was there and didn't like his little boys that couldn't use the pen either. Johnny was a little boy. The next one is also religious story. Big sweet, won't raise their ears. Never heard of such a thing in all your days. My teacher will be talking to me. Oh, nothing bigger than time for school today. I like this. I like that. I had scored me and I saw you faster than anyone can. I don't even somebody had joined me. Nothing bigger than too long today. It is true, Big Sweet. I thought that was because Pop is happening. It's happening. Oh, can this be true? You know else and you speak to me? Johnny is here and makes me the startle after the make at the topping and the topping accident. There is the kind of make up Patty, which happened instead of the tail. Cream Puff Patty listened to the loud story. Johnny. She got the two loggers had turned out in the hot sun to the water. Can this be true? People are shining their bridge. Bring them up from your own bag. It is true, Patty. But you're trying to keep them talking and not talking to school community. I don't hear sound from your change on you. I don't hear sound from your happy little. You were very awesome too long today. I'm sure I tried to go to school, so that I always stay looking at you for you. I can see can this be true? I thought that flipper's supposed to be. It is true, Grandpa Patty. I don't have anything to talk to me. I want to go to school to you. I thought that flipper's supposed to be. We have to go to the fall today. Johnny and Flipper big team. Grandpa Patty, Sandy tells all bunny an incredible tale. Talking Sandy, talking accidents, talking blackjack slippers. All of this could be a lot of stories. In this season, you need to get back to doing your work. You ought to still in the peace of the world. It is true, Paul Bunyan. I feel so that you can talk to me. And go to school to me. I thought that's what they're supposed to. I don't feel a sound from the night. And I don't feel a sound absolutely. And I don't get a sound from that just doesn't become Patty. No real siblings. Paul Bunyan took the things that did back to work. Now Paul Bunyan's most trusted companion is the philosophy admirer. He was who considered in the process. Paul was scared out of his skin to hear the oxygen. Paul ran out from the side. Paul discovered the ground with zombies and the strange frogs. Paul's children said deep wood as he took off running through the woods. The spring raised him and filled their switches up with water. The book has been 10,000 lakes in the North Woods. Johnny Ainslinger and Big Steve Grandpa Patty are much more thankful for their kids with their trade from that day on.
And that was Miss Dillon's third grade class at Yankeetown, so with Paul Bunyan.
One little boy's probably tired. He's talking
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yes.
I'm wore out watching it.
I understand.
All right, excellent job. Are there any changes to the minute in the practice?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
We skipped H,
Wait,
so.
yeah, the dates, we skipped something.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was tired from that voice.
I understand, so.
All right, let's look at our dates. I apologize. I'm glad y'all on top of it.
If you'll notice, they mirror this year's dates with second and fourth, with the exception of where we've had to change for the trim schedule, so which are noted.
Excellent. We need a motion to approve those.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the meeting dates and timelines. Any questions, any comments? None, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, there are no changes to the minutes. Anybody have any questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll talk to you later. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Ms. Boyle, do you have any questions? Mrs. Boyle.
All my questions have been answered, Mr. Asbell.
Excellent. Mrs. Brookins?
No, they've all been answered too. Thank you very much.
Mr. Etheridge.
Not just a comment, but but our supplement program, is that included in the consent agenda today?
Yes, sir.
Just a comment, it's a big part of our county, and I think to me, it's our goal setting, the directing of the county extracurriculars and all the other things. And I just, maybe doing it next year, I think we ought to do a workshop, because I think there's some areas we could do some work with on that, because I think there's, in my opinion, and it may just be my opinion, but there's some areas we could fund differently, I think, looking at the future. So
Yes, sir.
that's all I have.
All right, thank you. The only thing I have, and I neglected to talk to the superintendent about this, was on the contract that we have in here.
Yes, sir. The East Coast Technical Assistance.
Yeah, what are those?
So
what's the services?
they
What's that?
provide, so it makes up federal funds across the state, and it's a resource for Miss Jerry Michael entitled to use to reach out. So as they have questions, they have webinars, and it basically gives us a good sounding board and the ability to reach out. If we don't know the answer, to have an expert in the field to answer that question. And it's based off our FTE. So it's a relatively inexpensive contract for us compared to some of the larger districts.
I just did not know what that was.
Yes, sir.
$8,000. All right. I don't have any other questions. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any more questions, concerns? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Superintendent, your words of wisdom, please.
As you know, today is National Bus Driver Appreciation Day. So, and I vividly remember the days of myself riding the faithful yellow dog that would pick me up out at the county line, and Miss Geneva Gerald's, who served this district for a long, long time, not only as a bus driver, but as a substitute teacher. And her family's now work for our district too, and kind of carry on the legacy that she provided for us. So just a shout out to them. So if you see them today, just give them a pat on the back and tell them thank you, because it's probably the one job, as I remember vividly Mr. Turner saying, where you do almost all of your daily activities with students with your back to the students. So those people are very treasured, and we sure appreciate them. And it's been, I do know that we've had some difficulties with transportation with the issues that we faced this year. So with people being out and trying to get people hired. So Mr. Masters and Mr. Joe are working on some issues to kind of help us move forward with that process. So, but we sure thank our bus drivers and our aides that go along with that. The second thing, so, and not to put her on the spot, so, but Dr. Hall, if you might speak to the email that I forwarded you from Bess. So talking about kind of the good news for us. So
Annually, the Bureau of Exceptional Student Education, the Department of Education, will conduct on-site monitoring in all the 71 plus districts in the state of Florida. But recently, the last several years, instead of coming into districts which have never visited Lee County for non-compliance, we've been conducting desktop monitoring of our IEPs, more specifically IEPs for students ages 16 and older. If you recall, we can serve our students to the age of 22. They need a 5-year graduation plan or a 6-year graduation plan. They have the time to do that with no penalty to the school grade or to the student. And so every year for the last, since 2004 when I arrived, we've always been in compliance in those IEP reviews. We have to submit X number of IEPs to the state. They determine the IEPs that we pull, the students that we pull before they would allow us to select the students' IEPs. And they found that many districts are always in compliance, and so they randomly choose students. We submit to them a list of all our students. They randomly pull the names of those students. Then we have to upload all the documentation to support our rating. And through that, they go through their process, their validation process to be at SAT. And then they determine whether or not we're in compliance or not. If we're not in compliance, there's a lot of paperwork that has to be submitted over time. And many times they will conduct on-site monitoring to ensure
not only IEPs are written well for kids that are transitioning to post-secondary, but also are we implementing what we say that we're doing in terms of the IEP development. So it's a good day for Levy County once again. I contribute that a lot to our schools and the work they do to ensure that this is happening on a regular basis in a timely fashion, and my office as well, who support the schools in this endeavor. So it's beautiful, no money attached, there's no penalties, so we're good today. Every year we start new and fresh, so we've been blessed for many years.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. And then a couple other things just to point out to you. So last Thursday night, Cedar Key had their FFA banquet. So Ms. Boyle was there and also had some supporters there, people that had supported at the fair. Appreciate Ms. Weatherington and all the girls and young men that participated and were recognized there. This Friday will be Yankeetown's FFA banquet. So, and then last week also Joyce Bullock had the initial rocket launch for, I believe, their second grade class, and they've got a few more rockets that didn't get to take off last week. So this Thursday we'll have some more rocket launches coming off there. So, and then the last two things is we're coming down the stretch with the last couple days of session. I'll start with the bad news. House Bill 7045, which we'll dig into more, is the bill that combines the family empowerment scholarships, the Hope, the Gardner, McKay, combining those, the tax credit scholarship, kind of combining and rolling those into. The reason I point that out is because there is a couple things in there. The first thing is that it will be a escalation on the salary level. A family of four making $100,000 will now be eligible to tap into those family empowerment scholarships. And then the second thing is that there will be an escalator also with the number of students that is increasing every year that will be eligible to tap into that, which then will eventually erode our revenues. And the reason I bring that to you is because 2 years ago, we had roughly probably about $400,000 to $500,000 between McKay and the other scholarships. This year it was over $1 million, and we're projecting that it will be above 1.3 million in the upcoming budget that we're starting to take shape. So as you can see, that's a further erosion of the dollars that come to Levy County to help us educate students. The McKay scholarship is a flow through to us. The money comes to us and it goes out, and you've seen the list that you get year in, year out, that you see students all over the state that those dollars then flow to. I say that to say that we are headed and getting closer and closer to each parent being given a voucher saying, here is your money for your child, go educate your child. And so I say that for us to say, A, we have to do better, but B, also we need to be cognizant as we're talking to our representation and letting them know how important public education is in Levy County. So that's the bad news. The good news is that we were able to kind of hold the line on a few things. One of them categorical, which is sparsity. That you know of. So there was a bill out there that would have allowed new lab schools to come into the formula, which would have further eroded. And through Senator Bradley and Representative Harding reaching out to them, so they were able to reach out to bill sponsors to kind of get an amendment on the floor and to kind of hold the line to help our small boroughs. So I thank them for that. And the last thing, I sent out an email on Friday and talks about the impact. And I know that I've talked to each of you, and we know we each have people that have been impactful throughout our educational careers and also our lives now. And so these are just a kind of a touching of the different people that was sent back to me. We had an AP who stopped what they were doing, saw a teacher, just kind of looked off and basically reached out and just showed that they cared for that teacher. And I think one of the things is that it just kind of shows how important making relationships are to to our employees, but also with that and making sure that people know that we not only do we care about what they do every day on a day and day basis, but we care about what happens whenever they leave us and they go home. The other people were reading coaches. A teacher said somebody who had an impact on them was a student who walked up and gave the teacher a hug and said, "Can I have a hug?" So thinking about that. A bookkeeper, our new music teacher at Chiefland L. One person mentioned their softball team, an ESOL aide at Bronson Elementary, Mercedes Nix. And then another teacher reached out and said that a teacher she didn't know, she had sent an email throughout the district asking if somebody could answer a question. And a person she didn't even know from Williston, Luann Love, reached back out, was able to give her information that was very helpful for her as she was going on towards getting a certification. So I say all that to show no matter what your job or what your role is with our district, you have an impact. And I can't stress that enough to every single person in our district that you matter, and you matter with our kids' educational path. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Now move on board comments. We'll start with Mr. Etheridge.
I don't have a whole lot. I always get excited about this time of year when we get this graduation day times and we get to honor for just a few minutes of hard work and the successes, and then watching the next step. Dr. Hall and I had an opportunity to spend yesterday. She was helping work the CTE program, and as you left, and I was thinking last night, we have a crisis in our area and our nation where there's not enough employees for the jobs that are available. And I started thinking about graduation and the roles in the different areas, and I watched what Cedar Key's doing. This is important. And what I was talking about with supplements is important because the role that we play, and we can always do a better job, and I think we do a good job, but the tie to the workforce within our community and our county and surrounding areas to the need to our students. And we continue to do that, whether it's continuation of college or enter a career through trade. I had an opportunity this week with a kid who graduated last year who's entered electrical school in August. And a friend of mine who is basically doesn't have a child, but looking for a young person to mentor, put through it that will take over his company. So I linked those two together this week. He's going to help him pay his way through school in August, where he'll come and be a part of his. So I think the link, and we continue to, with the school district in our rural area to provide, there's a lot of jobs here. And the skill level set, we were talking yesterday, and I think Dr. Hall, at our ranch, the skill level set's changing, even in agriculture. And I know across the board that I told her yesterday, we don't have one cowboy left in our ranch, and the rest of them are tech operators, and things change a lot. And, I think Dr. Hall opened her eyes yesterday when I told her the tractors drive themselves now based off GPS. There's a whole new era coming, and we have kids that are trained through our CTE programs and what they're doing after school through the work programs that are preparing them for that. So the more we can support that, the more jobs that we fill. Because I don't know if y'all seen it, but there's a sign from every business in our county that's trying to hire. We have restaurants that are not staying open at part time of the day that some of our students could be filming and help make that link between the two. I think is part of our job. That's it. I'll get off my soapbox.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brookins.
Thank you. I agree with Brad, and it's a great need with jobs and that partnership that we can do. And I love Cedar Key, what they're doing, and certainly I'm interested in talking to that teacher. And I think Chiefland's going to start the new program as well.
Chiefland is making plans to start a hospitality program
And
also.
they'll start next year. All right. So that's great. And then graduation coming up, and I think that's exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And of course, we have a Chiefland High School grad student over here, and I'm glad to see you, Jonathan. Thank you for coming. And he started his career, with a great kindergarten, and so and he's working in Chiefland. So I think that's wonderful too. It's also teacher appreciation coming up next week, and I'm glad you mentioned bus driver appreciation today too. I think that's very important. We need to reach out to them. That job is difficult as well, but we do appreciate all our teachers, and Certainly want to thank them and support staff and everyone. So, looking forward to Mr. Cowart, confirming our funding and, for the school. That'll be great news. And once again, Chiefland High School, the progress is just great and just a real excellent team, don't you think, Breezy? They're great to work with and pretty impressive. It is. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Boyle.
I just want to thank Miss Nicole and Miss Rachel for putting so much into the kids and doing that presentation. When I'm down there, the kids, they do a lot of work, and it's great to see them out in the community. Also they didn't mention it there, but the state comes in, and Mr. Cowart, I'm sure, knows the specifics, but they come in and they look at the cleanliness, I believe, and the city gets a rating. And if they get so high of a rating, then all the citizens there in Cedar Key get a reduction in their flood insurance. So it's a win-win, and those kids are already benefiting the community as a whole. So that's really good. Cedar Key had a great prom. It was at the community center, and everybody had a good time, and I saw some pictures, and that was good. And the arts festival was great, except for some rain, and Mr. Cowart was slinging hamburgers at the kids. I just want to give a shout out to Miss Catherine Godwin. We will miss her, and Cynthia Ferris, the art teacher down in Cedar Key. We'll miss her too. Been in her class a couple times, and she's has something special with those kids, so she'll be missed. And Shayna Brinkman taking the role of Miss Charlotte. I think she'll do a wonderful job. And that's really all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. All I have to say is we are now at the point of the year that we have all worked so hard to get to, May. May is filled with all kinds of banquets and activities and good things. I look forward to ones that I will be at. Makes it all worthwhile. I appreciate y'all being here this morning. With no other business, we will adjourn, having a visitation to the construction site. Those